Hey guys, it's me, Andy. I'm back to read 2 chapters in the book of Genesis. Today it's 44 and 45. Yes, that's my cat right there. Last time we left, Joseph's brothers, the ones, and there she goes, there goes the cat. The ones who put him into a pit and then sold him into slavery. They were back in Egypt trying to buy more food due to God's heavenly ordained famine. You like the jazz hands? Jazz hands. Heavenly ordained famine. They still don't recognize Joseph, and I think that's a bit unrealistic. Of course, 5 seconds of reading the Bible and you realize realism isn't that book's strong point. A few strong points of the Bible: murder's big, genocide's kind of big, maybe realism not so much. Of course, Joseph recognizes them. I imagine you would recognize the people who threw you into a pit. Okay, let's get back to business. Here are chapters 44 and 45 in the book of Genesis. A silver cup in a sack. I like how the NIV version gives these little teasers for each chapter. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Sounds like what he did in the last chapter. You have to look at the video last chapter, or read the Bible, I guess, chapter 43. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men over there, at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done.'" I guess Joseph used a cup to divine God's will. Is a cup okay for divination and tarot cards aren't? What about a Ouija board? If Joseph had a Ouija board, would he have used a Ouija board to determine God's will? I don't know. When he caught up with them, the steward, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him, "Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that." There's an exclamation point. "We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks," from last time. "So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? Why would we do such a thing? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves." I don't know. If I was one of the brothers and someone was saying that, I'd be like, hold on. I don't think I want to be involved in this deal of whatever you got cooked up. "Very well, then," he said, he being the steward. "Let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame." The thing that you notice about Joseph's brothers is that they like to throw each other underneath the bus, pretty much. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. You got a drum roll going on there. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. Now, the youngest is Benjamin, and he is the full brother, a 100% brother, same mother, same father as Joseph. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. I imagine that's the brothers. They're like showing their grief and frustration. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. That's the Egyptian city where Joseph was. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in. and they threw themselves on the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this that you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by my divination, or by divination? Even if he doesn't have the cup, apparently Joseph can divine things. What can we say?" Maybe he has a backup cup. I don't know. Maybe he has a backup cup. "What can we say to my Lord?" Judah replied. "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt." The guilt was, of course, throwing their brother into a pit. "We are now my Lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup." But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace." Apparently Joseph was pranking his brothers hard. Then Judah went up to him and said, "Pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to the Pharaoh himself," which I think is somewhat unbelievable too, and seems to be just some kind of propaganda in the book of Genesis about pumping up Joseph in this story. "My Lord asked his servants, 'Do you have a father or a brother?' And we answered, 'We have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead.'" Of course, the brother who is supposedly dead is, of course, Joseph. "And he is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. But you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, so I can see him for myself.' And we said to my lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father.'" Sounds like is that like some kind of Old Testament snowflakey thing to say? Is that, the father didn't want to lose sight of the boy? "The boy cannot lose his father. If he leaves him, his father will die. But you told your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again," and you won't see that nutritious and delicious food. "When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what my lord had said. Then our father said, 'Go back and buy a little more food.'" If you're in a famine, I don't think you're going to send your boys down a couple of 100 miles just to get a loaf of bread. I think there's going to be more than just a little food, but I digress. "But we said, 'We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us, we will go. We cannot see the man's face unless your youngest brother is with us.'" It's funny that Joseph didn't give them a pseudonym, like Max. He just says "the man." "Your servant, my father, said to us, 'You know my wife bore me two sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces. And I have not seen him since. And if you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery." Sounds a bit histrionic. Sounds a little overwrought. "So now, if the boy is not with us, when I go back to your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy," i.e. Benjamin, "isn't there, he will die. Your servant will bring the gray head of our father in sorrow to the grave. It will bring the gray head of the father to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, 'If I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. So if I don't bring Benjamin back, it's my fault. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? How is that possible? No! Do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. That's an argument from selfishness, isn't it? I don't want this to happen. All right, chapter 45. Joseph makes himself known. Does Joseph reveal himself? Maybe he does. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before, do you like that whole rule? Control himself before all his attendants. And he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence. Go." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him. Man, you can never let the Egyptians hear you cry. That's not right. They're not going to respect you after that. Doesn't matter how many times you tell the future in your magic cup. And Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. You know, family get-togethers can be very awkward. Who hasn't had a situation like, "Uncle Pete, stop calling your poops little baby shits. It's wrong." Maybe my family get-togethers were different from yours. I don't know. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he knocked their heads together. No, he didn't knock their heads together. When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed." Should I give the Vulcan thing? Do not be distressed, and not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. So let's remember, the reasoning here is God sent Joseph ahead of them to save them from God's famine. Wasn't there a better way of going about God's goals without the famine? Wasn't there a better fix? Something with a little less suffering for everyone involved. For 2 years now, there's been a famine in the land. And for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great, I say, deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. That's an interesting way of explaining away guilt, isn't it, right? It wasn't you who did it. It was God. It wasn't you who did it. It was the devil. It's just typical. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, "This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near to me, you, your children, and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have." I guess that includes slaves too, because, I'm big with the slaves. "I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute." What happens to everybody else in Canaan? Does everyone else in Canaan just suffer? Is that what happens, just to prove a point? Come down to Egypt, you and your dad. Everyone else in Canaan, screw them. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. tell your father about all the honor accorded to me in Egypt and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly, post haste. Now, well, not now, but really soon. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Family reunions, very touching. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him. You see, the idea about Joseph pranking his brothers was just to see if they were still assholes for all intents and purposes, but they passed the pranking test. So that's why Joseph took them back. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Joseph and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan and bring your father and your families back to me." I guess that's how the Pharaoh talked. "I will give you the best." It's not really Shakespearean pentameter. What is it? The rhythm there. "I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." Maybe I should start speaking in an iambic pentameter. You know, the way how Shakespearean actors do. That'd be weird. "You are also directed to tell them, do this. Take some carts from Egypt to your children and your wives, and get your father and come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours." Sounds like a gift. Sounds like a situation a little too good to be true. That's what I'd be skeptical of. Just like the candy house, right? In Grimm's fairy tales, there's a witch inside. Maybe there'll be slavery in a couple of chapters. Who knows? And Moses will have to come and save them. So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing. Ooh, new clothes. But to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. I really like the word shekels. I think it's a funny word. I try to throw it into my everyday language, everyday patter. And this is what he sent to his father: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Don't quarrel on the way, bitches." All right, maybe he didn't put in bitches, but you could see Joseph saying that. You could see him. It's within his character. So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. I wouldn't believe anything those Yetzes said. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts, money talks, Joseph had sent to carry them back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, Jacob/Israel, "I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die," because Jacob/Israel is super old and wants to see his boy before he dies. It's very touching. I mean, who wouldn't want that? There we have it. Another 2 epic chapters gone in the book of Genesis. I think we're winding down towards the end. Christ, I hope so. So the 2 chapters are gone. Thanks for watching. It's always fun doing these things, these videos. Please subscribe. You know, if you want to subscribe, that would be great, because then we can keep this thing going. Godless bless.